Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and the Austrian Grand Prix has literally just finished, so let's go back over some of the main talking points from this weekend. My current situation: still homeless, still in a hotel, still waiting, and therefore still sort of waiting to get back to normality. Not great, but at least I got to watch the Grand Prix today, and I did enjoy it, but I wouldn't call it the best race ever. It was a very easy win for McLaren in the end, a decent 1-2 after Piastri got a very good start to get behind Norris. He didn't make it easy for Norris, he put a few chances on him at the start, and at the end he was catching him, but he couldn't quite close the gap. And it was what Norris needed. He needed another win, he needed to get some confidence back after Canada, and this was the perfect weekend for him. He got pole position, won the race, he was also fastest in two of the practice sessions. McLaren were pretty much a dominant force this weekend. They were a long way ahead of Ferrari, who were the best of the rest. Leclerc and Hamilton third and fourth. It was a good drive for them, and with Mercedes losing points at this race, and Red Bull as well, it's very good for Ferrari's Constructors' Championship. So that's interesting to see. It brings the Ferrari-Mercedes battle a little bit closer. It's an interesting watch for the rest of the season, which is looking to be a straight fight between the McLarens for the championship, and they look basically certain to win the Constructors' Championship, even though we're not quite halfway yet. Behind the Ferraris, though, it was a little bit more chaotic. Not a good weekend for Mercedes. They were a long way behind Ferrari. Don't know if that was just the heat. Whatever it was, Russell, who was really the star of Canada, just could not get the Mercedes to work in Austria. I think that's been a problem for Mercedes before. I don't think it's their best track. And fifth place, it's good enough for him for now. But with Antonelli not scoring, it's very, very painful for Mercedes. That crash for Antonelli taking out Max Verstappen basically ends Max Verstappen's championship hopes. Really, he's dropped too many points already. And with McLaren having a very clear advantage at the front at the moment, it's unlikely he's going to claw those back throughout the rest of the year. It'll take a miracle. And with Red Bull's troubles with the second car still ongoing, this was not a good weekend for Yuki Tsunoda, who dropped out in Q1, had a couple of incidents in the race, and was basically last of the finishing cars. It's put Red Bull in a very difficult situation where they are falling well off the top three constructors, and they're sort of far enough ahead of the midfield where they don't really have to worry about it. They're basically guaranteed fourth, which is not where they want to be. But for Max Verstappen to lose the championship, and to be honest, at this point, he doesn't really look like he's putting up much of a fight. He didn't have a great qualifying performance himself. It's kind of a sad end to his 4-year run of domination. It's been a very flat year for him. Difficult year for Red Bull, a difficult transition from the Newey era. And it's going to be interesting to see how Red Bull go in the future, what changes they make to the way they run their operation, what new staff they're going to be bringing in, what new changes to the car, what new ideas they bring. So it's really in the balance for Red Bull, and I think that's going to be interesting to see if Max Verstappen stays along for the journey. He's talked a lot about leaving Red Bull in the past, leaving Formula 1 even. If he's got 4 championships behind him and Red Bull can't give him the car, it's not just a case that he might change teams. I think he would leave the series and go to World Endurance. I think he's been tempted by that series before, and I can see why. The hypercar class is incredible, and it would obviously, winning Le Mans would be a big thing for Max Verstappen. Winning the World Endurance Championship, there are other championships that would be open to him as well. I'm sure he'd love to give NASCAR a chance, and IndyCar probably. It'd be interesting to see what he does in the future. I think for now he will stick with Formula 1 at least for a couple more years. I think he'll see how the Red Bull-Ford partnership goes, the new regulations, things like that. I think that's going to change Formula 1 a lot, and I think Max will at least want to stay for that. As for everything else that happened in this race, it was a disaster for Williams, with Sainz not even starting the race with a fire, looking like it just finished off whatever problem he already had, and Albon breaking down pretty early on in the race. Sainz dropped out in Q1, but Albon looked fairly quick again and probably would have been a shoo-in for points, given who did score points in this race. So, yes, very disappointing for Williams. Bortolesso really was the star of this weekend. First points in Formula 1, but it wasn't just that, it was a brilliant performance in Q1 as well. He was fantastic in the race. He made a couple of moves that he had to make, stayed ahead of his teammate, had a fair decent gap back to his teammate as well. Brilliant job from Bortoleto. He showed why he was back-to-back Formula 2 and Formula 3 champion. He's not going to be Formula 1 champion as well, but it's good to see him really star. He was the best of the rookies in this one. Even though Lawson finished ahead of him, Lawson does have more experience. But again, it was a brilliant job from Lawson to finish 6th as well. It's been a difficult year for him, obviously getting canned by Red Bull in what looks like a very premature move, and he maybe was not the source of Red Bull's problems. But I think he's needed to build himself back up at Racing Bulls. That's been difficult because Isaac Hadjar has been doing a very good job as well. And so he needed a very good result, and he got a 6th here. You can't say fairer than that. Alonso behind him, carrying on his good run of form, and Aston Martin's much needed slight resurgence, with Stroll again out of the points and really lacking pace. Haas were another brilliant team, and Hulkenberg for Sauber, they rounded out the points. All three of those drivers did a fantastic job. Behrman just outside the points, but I think Haas will be fairly happy with 10th and 11th. It keeps Ocon up in the top 10 of the championship. Hulkenberg again scoring points for Sauber in a year when I thought they really would not score any. He has been brilliant, so it shows you how wrong I can be. I am very wrong. Sauber have done a brilliant job this year. As for everyone else, Alpine will be very disappointed. Gasly looked quick at times, but in the race itself, it looked like he had issues with the car. It wasn't handling how he wanted, and he dropped out of the top 10. Colapinto had a scrappy race. Didn't look terrible. I thought he looked quite good in qualifying. But again, Alpine just don't seem to have the pace. And it's going to be interesting to see if they do swap Colapinto back for Doohan at any point. That's pretty much the field, I think. Hadjar did not have a great race. Lacked pace. Barely saw him somewhere in the midfield. Same with Stroll. So that was the Austrian Grand Prix. Interesting for the championship. It wasn't necessarily the most interesting race after the the opening lap carnage. It really was a case of Piastri versus Norris at the front. It was a big gap behind McLaren's to Leclerc. Leclerc had a fairly big gap to Hamilton. Hamilton had a very big gap to George Russell, who was only a little bit ahead of Lawson, Alonso and Bortoleto. And unfortunately, the last lap scrap between Bortoleto and Alonso kind of coincided with the last lap scrap between Norris and Piastri. And both battles kind of got in the way of each other. Kind of ruined both of them for us. But it was a fairly decent Austrian Grand Prix. I did enjoy this one, although I am fairly starved of entertainment at the moment, so maybe that's it. But I was entertained. Next weekend, we have the British Grand Prix, of course, at Silverstone. McLaren's home Grand Prix, as well as most of the teams, actually, because all their factories are in the UK. It's going to be an interesting one if McLaren can keep up this dominant pace. I don't see anyone stopping them in either championship. So for the rest of them, it's taking what they can. Can Lewis Hamilton take another win in the UK and really kickstart his fight for third in the championship, which is honestly as good as it's going to get? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of the Austrian Grand Prix? What are your predictions for the British Grand Prix? I will be back next week for the British Grand Prix. If there's anything else up in the meantime, count yourself lucky. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.